Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology Podcast, featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Hey, Gunkelman.
Sorry I was too beat yesterday at the end of the day to join.
Totally understand.
You get old, your stamina is just not what it was when you were a kid, so.
Well, we got all the questions. I don't know if you saw the email, but I can read them off.
Sure, it's interactive.
Well, it's like, what are we going to talk about? I don't know.
One of the things that was there was male versus female in sports, and I think there was more talk about anatomy than the endocrine and physiological difference. The steroids that are in males are anti-inflammatory, and they assist in tissue repair in a way that's not really present in somebody who doesn't have that level of steroid. And it's endogenous. It's not like the jocks are taking steroids; they're just making steroids, So, some people make a bit more than others, and you can see some folks are like natural athletes that have more easily gain muscle mass and bone density and so forth. So, the impact of steroids and growth hormone that are produced end up making a dramatic difference anatomically, but the physiological difference at a neurochemical level and physiological chemical level, the steroids, I think, are it's hard to replace them as a feature. Now, there are women that have testosterone levels. In fact, being low in testosterone for a woman is predictive of depression, and testosterone can be given with antidepressant qualities to women. But they have to have an endocrinologist show that there's actually low testosterone to appropriately use that as a method.
But Jay, what they were asking about was Neureka, 40 hertz scanning. What is Neureka?
You can promote something, and I understand business. You got to promote your product, but if you cherry pick your science and don't talk about the overall issue, I think it's a little bit of a kind of a passive defrauding of the customer. Gamma, if it's nested in theta or nested in alpha, where it's coming in brief bursts, is healthy. Having plenty of it is a good thing, and that's the only thing they talk about. However, gamma can be persistent, not occurring in brief chirps. They call them chirps and nested. You think we're all frickin' bird brains, but the little chirps, the fast little blips of the fast activity happen on the negative half wave of theta and the negative half wave of alpha, and they're actually content, and the lower frequencies are carrier waves. Anyway, the gamma that's persistent is seen in lesions, epilepsy, in thalamocortical dysrhythmia. It's a persistent gamma invading. So phantom pain, phantom sound for tinnitus, reward deficiency, Parkinsonism and movement disorders. There's excess gamma. and training it up is not necessarily a good thing. It depends upon the person and whether it's an appropriate thing to train for the person. And without some discussion about that by the marketing, you would think it's inappropriate to talk about good when there are side effect bads for specific things. You need to at least discuss the list of potential problems.
Good morning. You're sounding like me there, Jay. Careful.
We're talking about Neureka.
I speak at a lower register, though.
A lower register, yes. And what you have here, I have here.
Well, this only lasts so long. Next week, it'll be auctioned off.
Yeah.
We'll
Great.
see.
Get megabucks.
And I don't grow it because I think it looks great. I grow it because I really hate to shave. So,
Dr. Marie, what was your take on that question about Neureka?
I don't know enough. I just thought, it was just this interesting name, and some of it seemed like things other people have done, and other things, it just looked a little bit odd to me. So that's why I pressed the pause button, let other people talk, and give the floor to Jay today.
Well, Neureka is a product, and it's basically frontal suppression with gamma, and it's based on a Wave Rider Junior with a different person's logo pasted over it. So it's the amp quality is it's toy level, really, not clinical level. And the software is all biologic, and so it's somebody's amp and somebody's software packaged up and sold as though it's a product that somebody made. He's got to make a living, and there are some good things about it if you do it, assuming you don't have a problem associated with doing it. And again, my concern is the lack of discussion about the potential problems in the advertising literature. It's all positive, and no discussion about dysrhythmias and phantom pain and tinnitus and movement disorders and some kinds of addictions.
Those little things.
Little
things, yeah.
So there's potential to exacerbate the problem if you train gamma in somebody who's got persistent gamma. If your gamma is weak but chirpy, you need to have it trained up. And you can see gamma chirps in ADD in a normal person. You can see in a go no go task. You have 1 second of event-related potential, and event-related synchronization, desynchronization, a joint time frequency analysis. So you can see from the 1 second where they get the go signal, about a half a second later they recognize the go signal, and beta starts at about 17 hertz, where you're going to press the button with your finger. So that beta turns on, and about 120 milliseconds later, a normal reaction time from the time you recognize it, then they hit the button. So a normal person is going to hit the button about 620 milliseconds after the stimulus because of the normal reaction time for perception and response to having detected it. So what happens in somebody who's got a bit of ADD? Well, it's not like they're using a different spot. The beta synchronizes a bit later, and their reaction time is later because of it. And if they're a low-functioning ADD, they may barely respond before the end of the 1 second of response that you're given is a response time. But if you look not at the beta, which was the intention of Dr. Kropotov when he presented those slides, but you can see gamma. There's 6 blasts of gamma in the normal person. In the high-functioning ADD, there's 6 pieces of it, but they're not anywhere like the big flares in the normal person. The low-functioning ADD is missing some of the gamma nesting, and they're very, very weak little blips of it. So gamma training in ADD is actually a reasonably good thing to consider. Again, assuming no head trauma, there's things that can give you a problematic gamma frequency. In fact, it was called BAMA, gamma seen after a head injury. Harry Karasitis coined the term BAMA for the post-traumatic gamma.
Roll Tide.
I have to tease you, Jay, there about normal. But one little thing, though, that I think we have to put on, in terms of the caution button, everybody, their grandmother and their grandchild is working with ADHD, people who just do their weekend workshop and hang a shingle. So that's one of the things where I think it's really important to have this conversation. Everybody thinks ADHD is so simple. Well, we call the low-lying fruit, very, very simple attention difficulties. That's one thing. But there are many, shall we say, deregulations that find themselves under the classification of ADHD, and you can do so much harm. So please be careful.
Yeah. One of the nice things to do if you think somebody has an ADD, ADHD is to do a visual event related potential.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see if you break down the ERP with components is the step-by-step processing of the stimulus and the response.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that you see is the arrival of the visual stimulus at the back of the head. And if that's not correct, they have a visual processing problem. Not an ADD, but a sensory processing problem. The next step is actually the what is it, where is it, not just the arrival of the sensory information, but is this a go signal or no go signal? I mean, what is it, where is it, processing. And if that's off, you have a sensory processing problem. Not ADD. And now the next steps are executive function, the engagement of the motor system to hit the go button, or the disengagement after you almost started to respond to stop it for the no-go. Those are executive functions, and the omission and commission errors are responsible, those components are responsible for those kinds of errors. And ADD is going to be identified there. But there's a later latency component as well. And that late latency component is the anterior cingulate. Your CPT task for ADD may be a perfect performance. No omission errors, no commission errors, good reaction time, no low variability. But the person's anterior cingulate fires off again and again and again. It's giving them error messages, even though they have a absolutely perfect response. But that's OCD. You lock the lock. You lock the lock, but you got to check the lock. The error code goes off. So the anterior cingulate holds a model of what it thinks the world is supposed to be like, and when it doesn't match up, you get a non sequitur of some sort. It fires off. That's a late latency potential at about 400 milliseconds. And if you remember way back when the "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" was a song, the English teachers went crazy because of the double negative. But everybody kind of that trips off the tongue. Nobody thinks it doesn't trigger the double negative problem for most people when they hear it because they've heard it. Anyway, the model, when it doesn't match up, gives an error signal. And if it's a dysfunctional anterior cingulate, you have this obsessive checking and checking and checking, or washing and washing and washing, or again, obsessive and compulsive behaviors can be driven off the anterior cingulate. And that's another thing you can pick up with that.
Pete, can I segue in with another thing that was on the list? We were talking yesterday a little bit about learning disabilities, and that's when I got on my proverbial soapbox again. In terms of missed learning phases versus a disability. So, Jay just rattled off very quickly, 4 different regions, 4 different cultures, et cetera, all under, the quote unquote ADHD, which is a perfect segue in. One of the things that I essentially, sharpened my teeth on and what I became known for in this discipline was working with children and kind of kicking out the notion that all these children had a disability. Many of these children just were not present for whatever reason during a critical phase of learning, or the method that something was being taught by just didn't match with their ease of absorption. And before you know it, they're labeled with some form of learning disability. And this is what I call manufacturing disability. It just perpetuates. A very, very good example are children that are not phonetic readers. Okay, you can go on and on trying to shove the sound system down their throats and in their brains and through their ears. You're just going to crash, and they'll get further and further behind. But if you look at the brain of that child, and what Jay just mentioned, you look at the anterior cingulate, you look at the occiput, you look at the motor, all of these, you find where there could potentially be a weakness, and then you target the specific learning task with that system or region of the brain or brainwave, et cetera, and you can teach that child like that, your learning disability is gone. Okay, so I think for all people out there, please catch on to Dr. Mari's language. Mislearning phases with appropriate brain region, brain system, brain wave versus learning disability. You do miracles with children quickly, and they just go dancing off into the sunset. The label's gone.
That's the problem with the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Throw the DSM out. It doesn't predict treatment. There are ways to treat sensory processing problems and things that are going to be labeled as a learning disability.
Yeah.
If you actually look at the brain, you can see what area is not working well.
Yeah.
Is this a perceptual integration issue? Is this a Wernicke's area, comprehension and memory issue? Where on the right side is spatial perceptual, so you can have a nonverbal learning disability on the right side. So look where it is and fix the function in the area. Yeah. And there are kids who actually have discharges in the EEG that mess up sensory processing. Mm-hmm. There's an archaic term that's still used in neurology, and it's benign occipital spikes in juveniles. Juvenile benign occipital spikes. So why did they call it benign? Well, if you have a spike in the back of the head and it's not in the motor strip, you're not having a seizure, but it totally screws up your sensory processing. So hallucinations, sensory illusions, distortions, and now that we have medical technology they didn't have back when they were calling this totally benign, they're seeing cortical dysplasias, occasionally a vascular anomaly, and they're choosing to treat those discharges, and people don't have a change in seizures because they weren't having them. So neurology is taught not to give them anything unless you're having a convulsion. But again, occipital spikes can be treated with an anticonvulsant and improve sensory processing. Sensory detection, sensory illusions, distortions, and so forth will clear as the function in the brain actually is cleared.
And I'm going to say what Jay didn't say is typically people are prescribed antipsychotics under those circumstances, which doesn't not only do any good, it can be potentially harmful.
Yeah.
So, all of us, like I do not have prescription privileges, but a great gift you can give to anybody you're working with is tell them to go have a good chat with their psychiatrist, neurologist, or MD in terms of exploring the difference between antipsychotic and anticonvulsant for that issue.
Yeah. It's an important differentiation, and psychiatry hasn't historically looked to EEG for guidance, but the ones who are, the biological psychiatrists, are doing much better.
The group is growing. We're on
Yeah.
a cusp of change, I think. If we can keep, the bozos out, then I mean, we're on the cusp of magnificent change because neurologists, MDs, and psychiatrists are really looking to, voices
Yeah.
that are introducing this, who know the science, right?
Yeah. I, it's awkward for me to beat my own horn here,
You
but
can. You've earned the privilege.
the QG certification board just gave out 4 students received a scholarship. Well, not scholarship, grants.
Yeah.
These were $1,000 grants, and 2 students split one of them, and 2 students split the other one of them. And if you look at who they are and where they're going, these are not going to be counselors doing neurofeedback. These are people going into medicine, and people going into psychiatry, and people going into neurology, and how do we penetrate? Well, you foster the damn students to be able to do work in our field.
Yeah.
So
Realm of influence, right? Getting into the right realm of influence. We talk about the system and fighting the system, but an unfortunate truth, or just a truth, is you have to be within the system to actually change the system. Very frequently, you can't change the system from outside.
So
No
work
more
on the
polls.
students. Fund up the students to be able to work within our field, because it's not you got to get an amplifier, you got to get the software, there's all sorts of logistics and educational level things that it's a great add-on to their education, and it gives them a realistic entry into psychiatry, because they're actually seeing psychopathology as brain function or dysfunction,
and even if they don't follow our path, they'll have enough of awareness that they'll be open to it in standard and practice.
Speaking of students, we had a question that also came up regarding reference contamination. Explainer. Quick checklist for spotting, avoiding reference contamination. Any favorite fast teaching demo for juniors out there?
Gauss's law of electricity goes a long way back, and this is not like jaywalking, which is a law written by people. This is a natural law. I have to jaywalk, so
Jay Gunkelman.
But it's like impenetrability of matter. I mean, if you bump into something, you're going to get stopped. This is a natural law, and what it says is, if you're measuring currents that are inside of a sphere from outside the sphere, your measurements have to add up to 0. If you get a plus over here, there's a minus, a source and a sink. They have to balance. Now, where some of us are a little more spherical than others, and some of us doubt that we got any electrical activity in some people's heads, but nevertheless, if you put electrodes on the surface, you look at the recording that you're doing, if everything is going up at the same time or up and down at the same time, you have a signal that violates Gauss's law of electricity. Some have to go up, some have to go down. You should be a 0. So the ones that go up balance the ones that go down. Now, you might critique that as it's not a perfect model because we don't have electrodes all wrapped underneath the brain and under the back. But believe me, if you're seeing all of your electrodes going up and down at the same time, it's the reference. It's not the brain. So you've got to switch your reference for analysis. Now, you might record a perfectly recordable EEG with a funky reference bounce, but after it's recorded, if there's no gross electrode artifact, if it was just the reference, you can re-reference away from it. So linked ears is not often a good reference, In fact, this is not my opinion. There's a nice paper about it called Dangerous Phase, written by people out of Nunez's lab. It's a very short paper written in neuroinformatics as a journal. If the journal's neuroinformatics, this is a mathematics people that do neurology, so they're really looking at it in detail.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
And they're basically suggesting that linked ears is highly likely to be a contaminated reference, and it's going to inflate coherences because of common signal, and it's going to give you distorted waveforms because of the addition of the reference wave to the actual EEG wave. And to look at the spectrum and EEG more accurately, you should use a Laplacian technique. And Laplacian techniques that they're referring to are global average or current source density. And again, Dangerous Phase is the name of the paper. It's in neuroinformatics. You can look it up. Again, Nunez's lab is recommending CSD or global average to see the EEG more accurately as a reference because linked ears is too commonly bad. The paper starts out with first find a quiet reference. That we've been told that by everybody forever, and it's true. If you don't have a good reference, you're going to end up having a bad recording. So
go back to the nose.
Well, tip of the nose, there's the front of the chest, back of the chest. There's all sorts of complicated referencing techniques that have been tried over the years. But the current source density is considered a reference-free reference, and that's probably one of the best. There are times that you want to go to other kinds of reference if there's specific findings. If one entire hemisphere is bad, a stroke, periodic lateralized epileptiform discharges on one hemisphere, not the other, the number of reference points that are distorted by the abnormality will be displayed a bit too much. So you switch to a local average from a global average, and then the local average doesn't see it much until you get to the edge, but you won't end up seeing it over on the other side at all. So but there's a standard for interpreting. It says you should use at least 3 referencing techniques to understand what you're looking at. And they have a list of them, and I think their list is a little. I have a technical quibble with it, but then who don't I have a technical quibble with?
You keep us all on our toes, Jay. It's good.
Okay, volitional SMR triggering. Do you agree SMR can be volitionally triggered, as in Parkinson's examples? Any caveats on montage procedure outside formal sessions?
In fact, SMR is able to be used by people who have Parkinsonism to very good effect. Linda and Michael Thompson historically have presented case outcome reports on this. People that had Parkinsonism to the point where they would be frozen, they couldn't initiate a movement, and they learn SMR and it frees them to move. And there was one who was going to get an award and started to freeze and kind of centered herself and got back into the SMR and then was able to step up and fluently receive the award. And nice little anecdote. But if you're really interested in this as a topic, next week at Sassoon Summit, Lisa Tatterin, who's specialized in movement disorders for the last 20, I would say how many years, but she looks a lot younger than the number of years that she's been working, I have to say. So I don't want to out her age, but she's brilliant and is working in movement disorders, Parkinsonism, Lewy body, various tremors, and she's doing some very advanced work and has solid evidence and large N outcomes. And if you can't make it to the meeting, I understand, because it's booked. You can't get in. But you can get it on remote. It's being live streamed, and it gets 15 CEUs or CEs if you watch it live. If you get the recordings, you don't get CEs, but still good recordings. Now, if you can't afford anything, try to afford that one recording, because each presentation has a recording and they'll be available, and the money that you pay for the recordings goes directly to student scholarships. So it's not like you're funding us fat cats, yeah.
Wait, somebody's making money in neurofeedback?
All my spare money goes to the students, but it's really a great application for movement disorders, tremors, tic problems, spasmodic torticollis, facial spasms that give you a distorted look on your face. You can save the money for Botox by learning how to relax deeply, get rid of the muscle spindle excess tone that you're carrying around. There's a lot of good things that you can do. And the SMR application has a lot of positive outcomes out there. There's a long history of it. And again, specifically for Parkinsonism, it was used more for epilepsy and for ADD and things like that at one point. But the history, again, over more than 20 years now for work on Parkinsonism, and the outcomes are really quite strong.
I didn't understand any caveats on montage procedure outside formal sessions. Like, what would be outside formal sessions?
And montage procedures. I mean, you have to use more than one montage to understand what you're looking at. That's one montage thing. I think that's procedural, but you pick the electrode locations that you're going to be training based on the EEG that you're training. There's no theoretical, this is where to train for something. You've got to look. The same behavioral presentation, the diagnosis, doesn't necessarily predict what you're going to see and how you need to train. Sometimes it tells you where to look, but it won't tell you what you're going to find.
I mean, it's a good place to start. Okay, you've got the dot on the map, you are here, but you kind of have to locate the bigger picture and then see how accurate it is, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And if you find something, you have to understand the mechanism of how it's made and arrives there in order to fix it. So it's not all the simplistic point and shoot, whack-a-mole, there's the problem, so we can fix it right there. Sometimes fixing it right there requires manipulating other networks. So.
And the last one we had for Jay was placebo and prognostic, not diagnostic. How do you frame placebo positively while keeping neurofeedback results grounded? Any preferred language when setting expectations with clients?
Placebo's one of the more powerful horses in the race, if you could put a saddle on it. But the thing is, it washes out. And placebo effect washes out on follow-up. So the real effect sticks around and actually gets better. The people have talked about neurofeedback. Does the effect last? Not only does it last, but they get better at it. And I use the simple analogy of me learning how to ride a bike. Therapy was while my dad was still having to hold me up, and when he let go and I could ride on my own, I was done with therapy. Well, I was still a little rickety at that point, but I learned how to jump curbs, and I put the cards in the spokes and sound like a motorcycle. I could ride no hands. I would do wheelies. So you learn how to operate the system by operating the system. And the neurofeedback training gets you to an endpoint of training. From intake to outtake, there's progress. You can map that. But from outtake to follow-up, there's further progress. Joe Lubar did, I think, it's a 10 or 12-year follow-up on an ADD case, and everything had gotten even better. So I think that might have been Tansy involved in that. But it's well known as a phenomenon, but it's also borne out in the literature. A 6-month and 12-month follow-up. The learning has been consolidated, and it's more solid later.
Yeah, thank you so much for the way you phrased that, Jay, because when we were talking yesterday, I was saying, like, a placebo is not negative. It's not evil. You just have to be very transparent about it. And if I could just build on what you were saying, it gives you a magnificent start, right? Especially at the beginning when the work is really hard, when your brain is learning or you are learning how to affect change. So I really like the way you worded that.
Placebo is great. Nocebo, on the other hand, is really the shits. I mean, you don't want that. You can give somebody a positive spin on something and get some placebo effect. But you can also put spin on it. I'll give you this, but I haven't ever seen this work.
Well, that's what a lot of people come in with that attitude. Like, I heard about this, or my doctor, my psychiatrist doesn't believe in this, right? So I mean, we're always working. I mean, shall we just say it? We're working with attitude. We're working and working with that.
And if somebody says their doctor doesn't believe in it, I always say, well, Santa Claus requires belief. Science does not. So, I don't care what they believe.
You can measure the placebo. That's the big thing that I always emphasize. You can measure placebo. So, I think it's kind of a moot point, as long as it's not used as in your practice as a form of deceit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andy Luchter at UCLA has done a lot of work on placebo effect if you want to learn more about placebo effect itself. Mm-hmm. And oddly enough, placebo effect is getting stronger in the literature. It started out at about 20%. And now placebo effect is 30-35%. So the placebos are getting stronger.
Good. Yeah.
Somebody's made a placebo effect on the placebo effect, I think.
Ripple waves, why not?
A question came up that I was kind of curious about. I think I already know the answer to it, but training before a QEEG, whether a neurofeedback sessions right before a QEEG skews results. I would think it would. It depends is what came up in the meeting, but what do you think? Many prefer leaving a week gap for post-evals.
Are we back to our sponsor here? Depends.
Yeah.
If you're going to do a map on somebody, it's usually for a specific purpose. If it's on the intake, obviously there's no concern over something being trained immediately prior to a session. So you do the recording as a baseline. There's going to be some training being done, and you're going to measure change after the effect of a bunch of training sessions. 20, 30, 40 sessions later, you get a map to compare. if you do training immediately before the recording, it's probably not going to have a dramatic difference effect. What you've learned is long-term change, and they're going to have you eyes open and eyes closed for 10 minutes. And, you know, your state stabilizes as how you are. If they've changed how you are based on how you've learned to be, you're going to end up seeing that change in the maps. And these are important changes. Speeding up the background alpha. Oh, big deal. Half a cycle a second. Well, you just brain brightened them. Their semantic and declarative memory is now performing. They can spit back out in school what they've learned instead of going, I know that somewhere. It's in there somewhere, I can't quite pull it out. Poor semantic and declarative memory is slow alpha. So just as simple as speeding up of alpha. Getting rid of discharges in the temporal lobe may get rid of rage events or pseudobulbar affect, fits of laughter, fits of crying that are not really the person's emotion, they're false emotion. They're triggered by discharges, like a seizure. I mean, a seizure, you're seized. Somebody has taken control of you. No, you've lost control because of the extent of the voltages being generated in the brain are exceeding your volitional levels. You know how much voltage you can kick out during a seizure discharge? Any wild guesses?
A bit.
No idea.
A normal person, maybe lower voltage, 20, 30, 40, 50 microvolt in the background. If you can get maybe 100 microvolts in the background for the background EEG alpha, it's nice organized alpha. If you get a seizure discharge, the smaller ones might be 500 microvolts. They get up to 1,000, 1,500 pretty easily. The thing is, if you're pumping out 1,500 microvolts for a period of time, you're blowing out your brain's ability to recover from it. You're metabolically creating hypoxic lesions, and you can have necrotic change due to excess seizure activity in an area, and that's not at all a positive outcome. It's tragic. So there is sudden death from epilepsy, SUDEP. When you have an intractable discharge that doesn't stop, it can actually create an endpoint for somebody. So it's nothing to joke about, but intractable epilepsy is epilepsy that has not been found to be cured with medical treatment interventions, and they then propose surgery. Those are the clients we get and train how to control their brain, and they're seizure-free and medication-free. Isabella, the tennis player pro in Europe now, is going to be at Sassoon Summit next week talking about her experience learning how to not have intractable seizures. And her doctor basically told her that she was likely to die in her 20s from seizures because she was having a few hundred a day. And they were not easy. They stopped respiratory function, and when you turn blue, it's not a good move. So she was told they wanted to remove her right temporal lobe, or at least pieces of her right temporal lobe. I saw her EEG. It was being triggered from the left side. The big voltages came out over here. They were going to take out the spot that made the big voltages, but the trigger point on the left side was her aura was abdominal discomfort. Then the insula on the left side was the source of all of this. And the neurologist and neurosurgeon were going to take out her right temporal lobe, which was triggered by the discharge on the left side, but the big voltage is what they saw. Anyway, we trained her appropriately how to stop having her seizures. And it took a long time, a lot of work for her. Again, a very severe case, over 350 sessions. Her EEG was normalized, and she's off of meds. She went through Baylor University as a tennis scholarship. She was seizure-free for a few years before she could get her tennis scholarship for a university, and graduated with honors with her bachelor degree, got her master's degree in communications. She's a tennis pro, and she hopes to do lectures about intractable epilepsy being effectively treated with neurofeedback. So, she's going to be there and talking about what recovery from seizures is like. Her sister's going to be there talking a little bit about the PTSD a family can have when somebody in the family has seizures. When she hears a thunk, it almost stops her heart. She has a brief panic PTSD moment when somebody clunks on the floor. She thinks Isabella just fell and is having a seizure, and I'm going to have to go, help her, and hopefully she doesn't die. So the family dynamics is dramatically impacted by this. Lisa Bordoloro is coming over from Italy to talk about family dynamics in an effective epilepsy treatment that she did over there, and she'd been treating the family for a long period of time. So treatment in epilepsy is a focus that this year's conference is going to have. And again, if you can't be there, and you can't now, I mean, if you're not already booked, get the remote view, but pick up one of the lectures, individual lectures at $50 a piece. If you absolutely can't afford it, and you really, really are interested in it, and you're a student, let me know.
Well, this episode's going to come out Thursday while we're in Susan. We're going to try to do a Q&A at the bar the night before. We'll see how that goes, Jay.
The lounge.
That didn't work out too well a couple of years ago. It was fun, but I'm not going this year, though.
Oh.
What do you do? Have a fantastic time.
Too much running around the world. It hurt your ankle, So.
And then, we talked about Susan Summit, and then Dr. Marie, somebody's got a little problem with sleeping or they're freaking out. Got any apps?
Yeah, we have the trifecta app, so Brain Calm, which really helps to quiet without sedation. We have Sleep, which tackles overt insomnia, non-restorative sleep. And we just released Focus around a month ago, which targets all prongs of the, shall we say, the outward symptom of focus. So not just the focus that requires stimulation, but also the focus issues that are due to anxiety or over-arousal. Those ones we ask that a therapist, you work with somebody who knows their EEG, so they know which track is more appropriate for you. And again, all of our apps, there's solid data behind them, and anybody can reach out to me. And
solid data, what, like a last year or two? How many years has the data been building up for
30,
in the Swingle clinic?
Yeah, 30 years of progressive and still emergent data. Thank you, Jay, for that. We tweak constantly. So we're right on the ball in terms of that. Lots of folks are using it right before their intervention, so it can really, especially Brain Calm. So the client comes in 10 minutes before, does the app before the intervention. The other use is 10 minutes a day. Some of the sleep protocols are 20 minutes, daily to help with progression. Some of the focus apps, again, you use them prior to study, during study. And it really, really helps move therapy alone. And for individuals that aren't in therapy, it really helps as well. But of course, we have a pro version, use with your therapist and you're an ally. And we have a flow version, which is a little bit toned down so you can't hurt yourself, that anybody can just buy at, you ready? swinglesonic.com.
Right here. Where do we come up with what we just talked about today? Hey, you, the users, the viewers, the listeners, you wanted to know, we answered. You got a question, Pete at neuronoodle.com. If we didn't answer it, just send me an email. We'll talk about it right here. We get together every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific next week, or this week. Ask your questions. See you all in Sioux Sun City, Jay. Let's go, baby.
Sounds like a plan.
Jazz hand.
I will see you there, and you
I'll
will get.
See you too.
You'll get some of the swag when you walk in, and depending upon the donation, if you get around to it, so you'll see all sorts of silliness. The swag bag has examined the organ that's causing the problem with the brain on one side, and it's got a little Freud tossing the DSM in a trash can on the other side. Transcend the DSM, So anyway, our biases are right up front in the swag bag, and anyway, it should be fun. We plan a good party, and some good science happens around it,
See you soon, and so soon.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the show and want to help us keep it going, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps improve the content and brings on great guests and grow the show. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/NeuroNoodle. But hey, if supporting financially isn't in the cards right now, no worries. You can still help us out for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing this episode. It really makes a difference and helps more people find the show. If we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Hey everyone, here's a quick message from our good old buddy Joshua Moore at Alternative Behavioral Therapy.
I'm preparing to do an introduction to QEEG phenotypes. This is my first workshop on the topic, and this is just the introductory overview of the project. This is going to be very, very basic. So let's review each phenotype. We're just going to go through them one by one. If you look at the DSM 1, 2, or 3, and you look at the first chapter, it actually acknowledges that the DSM in mental health is just, quote, a descriptive adaptation, unquote. We're going to customize the interventions and tailor them to the individual's brain activity, not just applying the treatments or trainings to the individual's phenotype and maybe even their variants, but also customizing the protocols themselves to fit that person's individual unique frequency patterns. Maybe a dozen ways to have excessive energy in your nervous system, and then there's an infinite amount of ways to relate poorly to that excessive energy, which means that there is a lot of variations in what someone might call anxiety. And that doesn't mean that we're talking about the same thing when we're talking about anxiety. So complicated stuff. But when we look at a brain map, we get some basis in which we can start talking about what is this energy. Then we have to go to the client. We have to start talking to the client about what is your association to this specific kind of energy that I can see now. Then we get to care about things that insurance doesn't restrict us on. We get to care about like the person in a broader way. 85% improvement in mental health report following pairing a medication with a specific phenotype. Geez. Okay, have you seen 85% in any mental health studies for any medication? I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of different types of tests, assessments, and things that can be used that have things called neurocorrelates, which you saw some of those already, better success outcomes. That's what we really want. We need better predictive power. We need better individualization. That's what we want.